It's time! It's time! You like that? You like that? Woo!
It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Main and Dutch. I'm your host, and my main man who's just getting over NFL New Year. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil? You got a hangover from your New Year's NFL party? No.
No. As I discussed with friend Marcus, the idea of having this legal tampering period, 2 days before the actual league season, is akin to telling someone to turn up for their dinner at 5 o'clock, but starting eating at 3, and then by the time 5 o'clock rolls around, you don't want it.
Yeah, but no, you can't eat it. You've just got to, sit there and watch it. You've ordered it, and everyone knows you're going to get it, but you can't touch it so it gets cold. It's a strange concept. I don't really know why they do it.
You're being polite and calling it a strange concept. I'll just call it bollocks.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's a ridiculous idea, but they do it. I don't know why. We will get on to big free agents. Or as I've just noticed that I put it in the rundown, big free agents. I don't know if that makes them bigger because I named it twice. Mostly from a offensive / fantasy point of view. We got a couple of weird worlds. And then we got a fantastic interview. I say it's fantastic, we haven't actually recorded it yet, but I'm sure it will be, with Mark Schofield from Inside the Pylon, Locked On Patriots, and Dutton informs me, an aficionado of Toto.
One of the greatest bands the 80s gave us.
Our opinions of 80s music differ, so I'm just going to nod politely and move on, otherwise we could be here for an hour and a half.
By differ, you mean I'm right, you're wrong?
No, by definition is you think that someone pressing a fucking keyboard and that plays the whole song, including the drums, is good. I tend to disagree on that, but that's just me.
You take your Paul Hardcastle beef and go somewhere else.
Right, let's get this party started with a bit of weird world, and I guess we usually go to the US for this, but our first one is actually from the UK, and I think we need to. The headline for me, Neil, is "Don't mess with people's afternoon tea, especially their scones."
Mm-hmm.
National Trust in Cornwall apologises over, and this is in quotes, heinous scone faux pas. Yeah, heinous. They actually wrote heinous. It's well documented that Cornwall and Devon don't see eye to eye when it comes to ordering cream and jam on scones. I'd like to state for the record, I've lived in England my whole entire life. Okay, I've never been to Devon and Cornwall. Did you know this was well documented?
No.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine then.
Did I know? No. Did I care?
No,
probably not.
Both. But I think we will care because a scone with jam and cream is a winner, don't? But
absolutely.
But clearly, someone from Landrock National Trust didn't get the memo. A Facebook post on 8th March from Landrock House in Cornwall invited the public to bring their mums along for afternoon tea on Mother's Day, which was the subsequent Sunday, the 11th. An assisting photograph showed scones on a plate with the cream first and then the jam. Okay,
yeah.
However,
the right way.
However, Neil, you say that right, but now you just literally everybody who listens to this show from Cornwall has just switched off. However, the Cornish way is notoriously the opposite, and people were less than impressed. Tim Branton commented, "There's nothing Cornish about those scones. Hashtag jam first." Sorry. Come on, National Trust. Keep Cornwall Cornish.
Christ almighty.
This guy's running for president of the United States of America. Katie Craggs added, "Come on, Landrock. This is Cornwall, jam first and clotted cream on top."
These people voted for Brexit.
This is, I think, Dutton, like for people in America, that there's a phrase now like, in the UK lexicon, like this is totally Brexit, and this is what this is. Like it's a scone, like it's gonna have jam and cream on it. I'm not 100% sure it matters which way round it goes. I have a feeling I may go the Devon way here and go
Right.
cream and jam done. What do you reckon?
Remember your Haagen-Dazs training.
I do, yeah.
What goes in first? You have a choice to do it at ice creams. How do you determine what goes in first?
The tastiest one goes in first, right?
No, solidity.
Solidity.
You put the one in that's going to be able to withstand the runnier one, which is why you don't put Baileys in first if you have chocolate to come in second. Cream is a lot thicker, but it actually probably isn't. Clotted cream probably isn't. So you put your jam and put your cream on top of that. The jam can take it, the cream can't.
I'm not going to lie, like, I couldn't be less arsed. And as you can tell by my Haagen-Dazs training, I couldn't have been less arsed by your comments on which ice cream was better. To be honest,
I'm steal tea.
I'm stealing tea and coffee and making sure that when we get 3/4 of the way down on ice cream, that gets moved to the back so I can eat it. I may accidentally drop toffee crunch inside.
The thing is,
I can't confirm that is true or a joke. And I didn't work at Odeon Switch Island, and I'm not 100% sure whether we can still get arrested for what we did there. Neil.
Yeah, come at me. The problem is, when it comes to taking the Cornish view of food, they gave us the Cornish pasty, which quite frankly is a crime against food.
Yeah, but
so I'm not really interested.
The Cornish pasty has a logic, though. Like, if you don't like it... No, well, they used to go down mines and that, didn't they? They used to wrap it up and, it makes sense. It's better than a sandwich, do you know what I mean? I'm okay on a Cornish pasty. I don't know what your issue is, but that's a different story.
Rather lick the inside of a Hoover bag.
Yeah, but you literally right now, we're having a video call and I can see you eating a dry cracker. So let's not beat around the bush here. No one's interested in your food comments. No one's ever interested in what you believe is right or wrong on food. However, people may be interested in your thoughts on the next story.
I doubt it.
Well, we're going to find out anyway. The things you do, you have to do to say yes, Dutton. So, I believe you're engaged. I'm married. Again, cough. But on my wedding day, twice, I was okay. I wasn't nervous. However, I believe this bride was. As the title suggests, bride busted for DUI on the way to her wedding. Maybe next time she'll say I do to driving sober, Neil, says the Huffington Post. An Arizona woman.
Not the best word.
Shame Arizona. Shame it wasn't Florida. An Arizona woman involved in a 3-car wreck was charged Monday with driving under the influence on the way to her own wedding, according to news reports. Wearing a white dress for her big day and handcuffed, Amber Young, 32, was pictured being ushered by an officer into a police department squad car. Don't drive impaired till death do you part doesn't need any help.
Unbelievable. And yet believable.
It's both of those things, Neil. It's unbelievable and believable. Police said the officers arrived at the crash scene about 10:30 and one person was transported with minor injuries. So, it's 10:30 in the morning, she's in her wedding dress and she's hammered. And she's caused a 3-car pile-up. Like, the question you've got to ask is, how badly did she not want to marry this man?
Well, I think if she was really that desperate to get out of it, she'd have been bladdered going away from her wedding.
Yeah, I guess we don't actually know the direction she was heading. She just happened to be in a wedding dress.
Yeah. If anyone out there happens to know, which direction she was going and can give us the GPS of the church in question, by all means, don't bother sending them.
I just love the idea of. I was there and I was getting ready on my own, so I had a vodka and then I had another vodka and then all the Smirnoff was gone. So I got a Johnny Walker Blue and then I decided that I needed to drive because I was late.
But why has rum gone?
Brilliant. As always, we love the weird world stories because most of the time we read them and go, what the actual heck is going on in the world? And they're usually funny, not actually like if you watch the news and then think what the actual hell is going on in the world.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. If you've got any stories, do send them to us. I'm at Mangy7, Neil is at Ndutton13, and combined we are at waxing_lyrical. As always, as we say, I write on that, as you can tell. bad spelling and grammar.
Yeah, on a week where essentially Donald Trump suggested forming Starfleet, we don't actually need to focus on the real world too much.
I totally missed that. Seriously?
He
How
said
did I miss that?
Yeah, his exact speech was, we need to have people, a force in space, a bit like the Army and Navy, as we already spend so much money in space. Okay, spoiler alert, dickhead, you've cut NASA spending, and B, what you're actually saying is now guns in space. Okay. Someone watched Star Trek Beyond and thought, ooh, that's a good idea.
Literally, millions and millions of people voted for him. Literally.
Yeah.
Not like joking either.
If I was to learn, of course, keeping the space theme, that this planet was doomed tomorrow, I think I'd be cool with it.
Yeah, it's like the idea of people of the Brexiteers not noticing that Ireland was two different countries and we only made one of them leave Europe, and he thought it'd be fine and no one would notice, because as a country we haven't had issues in that country for hundreds of effing years.
But even so, the classic British way, what did we describe it as? A conflict? Did we describe it as, the troubles? Yeah. The minor inconvenience.
Oh my God. Anyway, before we get ourselves banned, let's actually talk about what we're here for, and that's the NFL, Neil.
Yeah.
And it's been free agency week, as we said. There's been loads of moves, and we're not going to go through them all because that'd be boring. And also, I can't really remember them all because I haven't got like Rain Man style powers. So we're going to talk about the big ones. First one is a big deal, and that is Kirk Cousins. Don't know if you've heard of him, Neil. I'm not aware of his worth. And he's going to the Minnesota Vikings in a 3-year deal worth somewhere in the region of $84 million, and that is all guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think from a Minnesota point of view, Neil?
Well, Minnesota were able to be... they were essentially the second best team in the NFC with Case Keenum. So they obviously had, a strong supporting cast. There was Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph. They weren't a particularly good running team, but they were a consistent running team, and that they just kept doing it in the hope that one would eventually break it. They'd be able to get something eventually. And they were able to protect Keenum. So they've shown that they can be productive with a quarterback who I don't think we're breaking any odes here in saying isn't as good as Kirk Cousins. I've just got a little stat for you. 102 completions, 148 attempts. That's 68.9%. 1,223 yards, 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Adjusted yards per attempt of 8.13. What am I talking about?
Don't know, go for it.
Kirk Cousins' record inside of domes.
Which is not unsurprising, really, Neil, as he has a good record. And I think we played against Minnesota in Minnesota this year, and he was excellent.
Although I should point out that it is only over 4 games, and Cousins' record in those 4 games is 0-4.
0-4, yeah. We should. There's a couple of things on the Kirk Cousins thing. When we originally started with Kirk down this track, I think he wanted 3 years around $58 million, and we said no. Then paid him 48, and then let him leave. So, bravo to Washington, but let's not talk about them. I'm interested in the Kirk Cousins thing because I don't think people know if he's good or not. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you've got Kirk Cousins, everyone laughs at you because you've got Kirk Cousins. But then Kirk Cousins is leaving, so everyone laughs at you because Kirk Cousins is leaving. Now Minnesota have him, and people are like, well, why didn't you just not keep Case Keenum? Do you know what I mean? It's like, is he good or not? I don't know. But I think he's going to get the chance to find out. When he's had talent around him, he's been good. I think concerns around his red zone efficiency are stuff that needs to be dealt with. However, that's probably a Jake Gruden thing.
I think as well. We've seen last year. It's been revealed subsequently that John DeFilippo came from a coaching staff in Philadelphia where they focused on what their quarterback does well, and what they can do to make their quarterback most comfortable and efficient. So obviously I think what this means is you should get Kai Forbath as soon as you can in your draft next year.
Kai Forbath should be a high round pick in fantasy next year because he will get a lot of 26-yard field goals.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, Dutton, for me, and it's the other side of the coin, it's Case Keenum. The bridesmaid, and now a Denver Bronco.
The Denver Broncos are pathologically unable to draft and develop their own quarterbacks. But as the conversation I had with you, when was the last time they drafted a good, efficient, long-term option at quarterback? And it was the long-term that defeated the Jay Cutler answer. Because
the Jay Cutler answer, by the way, was partial comedy. Thank you.
The two best quarterbacks in, I could argue, in the Denver Broncos history, both came from the Colts.
Yeah.
So ultimately,
if you think that John Elway was always at the Broncos, by the way, just do history books, and you know that you're probably the same person who slags off Eli Manning for saying he doesn't want to go to San Diego. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, dickhead. Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's a case of all their players came out, and I said this: Von Miller, Brandon Marshall, all these people. Oh, if you get Kirk Cousins, you're automatically a Super Bowl contender. Well, you're gonna have to walk that back now, aren't you? So what position have you put him in now? Well done. Tell you what, you play. Front office will try and get these players for you. Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, as I said, we saw what happens when everything goes right. So I'm going to knock him down now by saying the Broncos have an abysmal offensive line. They have two fading wide receivers. They have no ground game and no tight end to speak of. Why am I supposed to be excited by this?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think everyone just assumed that, okay, they won the Super Bowl and they didn't win it because of Peyton Manning. They won it because of everybody else, so they must be awesome. But when Peyton Manning left, everything else also got worse as well, and they aged all together and got worse. And although Peyton Manning was a statue, the O-line wasn't great then, and it's kind of got worse. And if you can't be as clever as Peyton Manning, then it becomes an issue. And I don't think Case Keenum is that, and I don't think they've got an offensive line. And I would not be surprised, based on where they drafted a quarterback in the first round.
I think they have to. And ultimately, we're seeing, time does not stand still for people. Demaryius Thomas's numbers have gone down, and down in the last few years. I love Demaryius Thomas in his pomp. He was a very good receiver. Unfortunately, his skill set does not lend itself to sustained excellence in the same way that someone like Antonio Brown does. And the Broncos, they don't draft well. They're not a very good front office. So,
if we move on to wide receivers, the big wide receiver pickup is Allen Robinson, and he's gone to the Chicago Bears. I guess the Chicago Bears are doing what, in theory, I mean, they're spending money and whatever, but they're doing what they should do, which is they have a second-year quarterback, and they're giving them weapons.
Absolutely, it's the Eagles approach almost.
Absolutely.
You can argue that, Allen Robinson is this year's Alshon Jeffrey, both coming off injury. I would argue that Jeffrey was more consistent than Robinson. But don't forget, Allen Robinson had that wonderful season. Was it 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns? But then the next season, off the exact same number of targets, he was bloody awful. His receptions his receptions were down, his yards were down, his touchdowns were down. Do you blame Blake Bortles, or do you say that the truth is somewhere in between? Now, obviously, he's as close to an ex-receiver as is going to be on the open market, but obviously you have the question, why didn't the Jags want to keep him? I mean, I said last week that maybe he priced himself out of their market. Well, we saw that they paid, was it $60 million guaranteed to a guard, so we know how low their market for wide receivers was going to be. Now, the Bears have done the smart thing by surrounding Trubisky with talent. Now the question is, are you good enough?
But I think that's the only way you're going to find out, Neil, isn't it? There's a load of franchises there. You'll say, "Oh, we got a rookie quarterback, and then he was rubbish, so we got rid of him." And you're like, "That's great because you had all that talent around him, so you gave him a real good chance of winning." Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to give him a chance. Like last year, he didn't really have anyone to throw to. You know, you look at some of them games, and I think it was before he started, and he like dropped about 3 in the end zone to win a game. You know, you need safe hands, and they bought Tyler Gabriel in as well. A-Rob, Jordan Howard, Tarek Cohen. You know, they got players.
And trick play Trey.
Yeah, trick play Trey. Obviously, he'll be the second best quarterback on the roster.
First of the push.
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth it. It's you got the money. Will you regret it in 2 years? Probably. Does every team in the NFL regret every contract after 2 years? Most of them, yeah. What I will say is on Chicago, just before we move on, there's no greater job in the NFL than backup QB, and right now Chase Daniel is the epitome of the greatest backup QB of all time. No one holds a jersey better than Chase Daniel.
Chase Daniel is David May.
Final one, Dutton, before we go and speak to Mark, and it's a tight end who may it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. Sorry, I'm reading this right. It says Jimmy Graham, and I've heard of him, and it says Green Bay Packers next to him, and that doesn't work because he's a free agent guy, right? So does that mean that Aaron Rodgers has got someone to throw to at tight end?
It means Aaron Rodgers got someone who could stand in the end zone and get the ball thrown to him, but offers very little else anywhere else in the field.
That's
basically, Jimmy Graham's yards per reception last year was only marginally higher than if Mike Glennon had fallen on the floor, put his hand above his head, and just passed him the ball. He was absolutely abysmal downfield. He couldn't separate, but he was great in the red zone. If ultimately that's what the Packers are going to use him for, and instead of wheeling out Mason Crosby to kick 17-yard field goals, then he'll help. But ultimately, we saw last year that obviously the Packers' major trouble over the last few years has been the defense. And also, they've released Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb isn't very good, and it's Davante Adams and no one else.
Remember when the Broncos and the Packers were good? That was fun.
Halcyon days of yore, my friend.
Halcyon days of yore. On that note, Neil, I think we should call Mark Schofield and get his thoughts on the QBs and what's going to be going on in the draft this year. And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical is Mark Schofield. He's from Inside the Pylon, locked on the Patriots, and as Neil has informed me, an aficionado of all things Toto. Mark, how are we today?
Paul, Neil, pleasure to be with you guys. And yes, I am a Toto aficionado. It's kind of become my brand on Twitter, and I'll roll with it as long as I can.
Everyone needs a brand.
You do?
Neil's got one. It's being an idiot, so that's good. That's good for him too.
Do it very well.
Exactly. So Mark, given all the activity and movements around the NFL over the last few days, I suppose the most important question for us to start with is Bob Kelsey the most underrated TV show character of all time?
I think so, and he doesn't get his due because so many people focus obviously on JD. They focus on, the main doctor that he butted heads with. They focus on the janitor, who I think was a great, character as well. But he definitely did not get the attention he deserved, and I like that they kept him on, for pretty much the entire run. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
As man, the introduction of what's got two thumbs up and doesn't give a crap.
Right.
Bob Kelso. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen or heard in my entire life.
It's a fantastic line, and I wish I could find a way to have the courage to use that more in my own real life. When somebody asks me a question on the street or my wife asks me a question, to try to use that. Maybe I should, but I'd probably end up, on the streets myself. So
yeah, not with your wife.
Yeah, probably not.
So getting back to NFL, but obviously I'd talk about scrubs for a lot longer, but that's not why we're here. Several teams made moves at quarterback this week. The players they brought in don't seem to suggest that they are immediately the long-term answer to that team's issues. Do any of these players, the likes of Sam Bradford, Tyrod Taylor, AJ McCarron, for example, do they seem like they're the type of player that are going to prove me wrong?
I don't think so. The only one that I might potentially put in that category would be Teddy Bridgewater, in the sense that if it turns out that his knee holds up, that if he can still play the game at an elite level or above average to good level. I think the scheme that he'll be running with the Jets will fit better with his talent, because when he was in Minnesota, he was in more of a downfield, vertical passing game under Norv Turner, a lot of 7-step drops. I think this sort of West Coast offense, I imagine Bates brings to the Jets, would fit well with him. But the other guys, I mean, you name it, Tyrod Taylor, A.J. McCarron, Sam Bradford, these are bridge-type guys. You could even potentially lump a Case Keenum in with that group as well, because while the Denver Broncos just signed him, I'm not so sure that he's the long-term plan for them, at the quarterback spot. It wouldn't surprise me if they still go quarterback with that 5th pick. Maybe they don't. Maybe they wait till later in the draft. But I think the other guys are all sort of that, 1-year bridge-type guys for teams that are going to address quarterback early in the draft.
I look, and the one for me is always Sam Bradford. Like, I would love to just have half an hour of the amount of money that Sam Bradford's earned over an NFL career.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this show and you've got young kids, put a football in their hand and try to get them to throw it like as early as possible, because look at Chase Daniel. I mean, he's thrown 200 more NFL passes than I have. And he's still collecting checks. He's still signing deals. I mean, it's a great gig if you can get it. Be an average backup quarterback. There will be a market for you every offseason.
And so I think we've talked about this in the past, though, isn't it? If you're a backup quarterback, the worst thing that can happen to you is playing. Yeah, because you remove all doubt.
Right. I mean, look at Matt Schaub. I mean, that's sort of the roadmap to how they can all go south for you as a backup quarterback, because people bought into Matt Schaub being more than just a backup quarterback. He got a big-time deal. It had to play. It went south for him. I mean, if you're a backup quarterback, you do your homework. You find the guys that are going to be durable. You try to move towards those teams in free agency. You never have to get on the field, and you don't have to ruin what you've got, a nice little gig you've got going for yourself.
Absolutely. As there will be teams drafting high quarterbacks, some of them have already made those band-aids we've already talked about. And I guess the question is, do you see are those teams clever enough? I read this and think of the Browns we're talking about, so maybe not. I've already answered my own question. Are they smart enough to pick a quarterback in free agency to then mirror that exact same quarterback skill set in the draft? So do you think they're going to do that, or do they just think, I'm going to get Tyrod Taylor and then I'm going to get, I don't know, Josh Allen, and they're completely different?
What's interesting about that, Paul, is I actually wrote this week that the signing of Tyrod Taylor might give us some insight into what Cleveland's doing at the quarterback spot. And one of the guys I potentially threw out there was Josh Allen. And the reason is this. You look at the way Todd Haley likes to scheme stuff offensively. He prefers the vertical passing game. He likes to push the ball downfield. If you look at all the quarterbacks that had more than 5 starts in the NFL last season, the only player that had more downfield throws, defined as 21 yards or more downfield, than Ben Roethlisberger was Deshaun Watson. And that's sort of in terms of a percentage of their total passes. Roethlisberger attempted 15.3% of his passes more than 21 yards downfield. Haley likes the vertical game. And if you look at Tyrod Taylor on tape, you look at his numbers and his splits and where he's had the most success, it's on downfield throws. And so I think you can get Tyrod Taylor in to run a vertical passing game. He was put into a West Coast-based offense last year that wasn't his best skill set. He's much better downfield. He's much better processing information downfield rather than quick on time and rhythm like that type of West Coast offense requires. And I think that would mesh well with what a Josh Allen could do. Similarly, if you look at Teddy Bridgewater and how he might fit well with a West Coast offense, I think you look at Baker Mayfield and you can't help but wonder, is Mayfield going to end up with the Jets at pick number 6, or maybe they move up a couple of picks? But that's just me looking on the outside. I mean, like you said, Paul, these are the Browns. They're making good moves right now. It seems like they've got things all sorted out, but maybe after all this, they end up and they shock everybody and draft Luke Falk with the first number 1 pick. I mean, it wouldn't shock me.
I mean, let's be honest. Like, I think regardless of all that thing, we need a world where someone who's, has a personality like Baker Mayfield goes to New York. That everyone in the NFL should be hoping for that.
I mean,
just for them New York Daily Post headlines that we'll get on Twitter every couple of weeks after they've been beat or he's done something or whatever. It'd be fantastic.
I mean, if you're an NFL writer, if you host an NFL podcast where you can just kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about for a while, your dream scenario is Josh Rosen to the Giants at 2 and Baker Mayfield to the Jets at 6, because then you've got 2 guys that are not afraid to speak their mind. You might have Josh Rosen running around with hats about the president that might speak about the president in a derogatory which might lead to the president of the United States tweeting about Josh Rosen, the quarterback for the New York Giants. I mean, this is the world we live in now. It's not outside the realm of possibility that as soon as Josh Rosen gets drafted, we see an angry tweet from the president about it. That's just a fact of the world we live in now. And so, yeah, I think that's a dream scenario. Have both those guys in New York City and let them, have fun with the New York media for the next 4 or 5 years.
You mentioned Josh Allen. Obviously, you've written about him. He's, should we say, somewhat polarizing figure. He didn't seem to do himself any harm in the Combine a few weeks ago. Is there a danger with players like Allen and underwear Olympic gold medalists in general that the Combine almost forgives their weaknesses and overemphasizes their strengths?
Yeah, especially for, Josh Allen thrown at the Combine. This was kind of the scenario where he was set up to do well. And, I've equated Josh Allen to a number of different sort of comps in the past. And I think the one I've most settled on is he's the guy that can go out and you'll be watching ESPN on late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, wherever you're out at the bars or whatever, and you see a long drive contest, and you see these guys that are hitting the ball 475 yards right down the middle. They're just crushing it. But you're not going to take that guy, put him in the Masters, and expect him to win because you pull driver maybe 3 or 4 times around. All the other stuff, 7 iron, short irons, the wedge stuff, he can't hit it. It's the same thing with Josh Allen. Sure, he can throw the ball 55, 65, 75 yards downfield with velocity. How many times are you doing that in a game? Meanwhile, like I talked about a little bit earlier, 80, 85, 90% of all throws are within 20 yards in the National Football League. NFL offenses are averaging 90% of throws under 20 yards. Those throws sometimes require a little bit of touch, a little bit of time, a little bit of anticipation. That's where he needs development. And so while he looked great at the Combine, I think he did help himself. We did see some mechanical stuff that was getting cleaned up, the delivery getting a little bit tighter and cleaner, which might help with his ball placement. That was his event. We just got out of the Olympics. That was his event to shine, and he did what we expected. But it's all the other stuff that have me wondering about him transitioning to the NFL.
Neil, did you tell Mark about my golf game before he made that analogy, or is that just a coincidence?
Oh, so you can stripe it down the middle?
Oh,
there we go.
That's easy, right? I'm basically like without the running after it, but I'm basically Happy Gilmore at this point. I had to basically give up the game because I got so annoyed of just missing all the time.
You just be on one of those long drive contests, Paul. Maybe I'll see you on ESPN some night when I'm watching.
I wouldn't mind.
Golf shops refused to sell him putters because he kept throwing them up trees.
Yeah. It's not good. Like
we've all been there. We've all thrown our clubs in the drink at one point or another.
So we talked about dream scenarios from an NFL writer's point of view, but I guess given your knowledge of schemes and coaches, are there any quarterbacks that you think you would love to see land somewhere? And is there a scenario where you just think that is a terrible match between coach and QB?
Well, there are a couple of different ways you can go with this. I look at, and he's a name that's caught a lot of attention recently, Kyle Lauletta, the kid from the University of Richmond, and I do look at the New England Patriots at some point in this draft with that potential marriage, because you watch Lauletta on tape, get a chance to talk to him down at the Senior Bowl. Very smart, cerebral kid, played in 4 different offenses under 4 different offensive coordinators while he was in school. Has a really good understanding of the game. You can see it sort of play out, when you're watching him, whether it's at the Senior Bowl or even just when he was at Richmond. And I think he would mesh really well with what Josh McDaniels wants to do offensively from a schematic standpoint. I think he'd fit in that culture in New England. I think that relationship, that potential marriage makes just too much sense to me. And then you look at some others that probably wouldn't. I think, not that this team is going to be in on a quarterback, but if you look at Josh Allen's skill set and then you look at him running, say, a traditional West Coast offense like, the Chiefs run or like the Eagles run, not that those two teams need a quarterback, but that's probably the worst case scenario, I think, from Josh Allen, because it doesn't really fit what he does well. And you could put Chicago under Matt Nagy. It'd be a similar type scenario. 3 teams that don't need a quarterback right now, but, maybe the Vikings. That would be a bad situation too. The Vikings might want to grab a quarterback, but Josh Allen, that wouldn't work out as well. I mean, I don't want to sit here and just crush John Allen, as much fun as that could be, but he's got an interesting developmental path to the National Football League and to being good. I think the dream scenario for him is to fall to a team a little bit later in the first round where he won't have to play right away, can season, can develop, or goes to a team that has a nice plan in place like the Browns at one, that have some time to sort of let him ease into the game and have a quarterback in place like Tyrod Taylor that they can use that for.
So given, as you say, give him a chance to sit behind and develop, there is a team that's, I'm not going to say committed to a quarterback, but certainly try to get a ring on them. Very, very run heavy, not a great, some transition at wide receiver. Could the Jacksonville Jaguars maybe be a team like that for Allen?
I think that would be a good team for him as well, because if you look at what Allen does from an offensive schematic standpoint at Wyoming, they did a lot in the run game. He was doing a lot off of play action. We can see with, obviously, the drafting of Fournette last year. They just signed the guard Noel from the Panthers. They're going to try to upgrade on the interior of that offensive line. They want to run the ball 50, 55, 60 times a game. That's what they want to do. They want to basically take the ball out of Blake Bortles' hands, which some of us might understand. And so when you pair Josh Allen in an offense like that works off a play action, that might scheme some downfield throws and take advantage of 8-man, 9-man boxes that you'll see defensively, that's a great fit. Could Allen fall to 29? I doubt it. I think it's a will versus should debate, and that will he go top 5? Yeah. Should he? No. I think Jacksonville will be great for him at 29. I can't imagine he'd be there. The name I do wonder about Jacksonville is Lamar Jackson. Not that, Fournette does a lot out of the shotgun. He much prefers to be, running the football with his quarterback under center. But that's a tantalizing option where you've got a backfield of Lamar Jackson and Leonard Fournette, because you can put 8 men in the box, but you don't know who's going to be carrying the football. It's a lot different than putting 8 guys in the box against Blake Bortles. So if Lamar Jackson's there at 29, I'd consider it if I'm Jacksonville.
Last question for you, Mark. Very, very appreciative of your time, as always. I can't remember if I asked you this last time we spoke, but I'll just ask it again. Newcastle?
Yes.
Why?
Yes. It's a funny story, Neil, because when I was, back in the early 2000s, looking around for a Premier League team, this was back when, obviously, I'm a kid from Boston, Red Sox fan, Patriots fan, and, both of those teams at that time weren't what they were now. They weren't the Patriots we know right now. The Red Sox hadn't won a World Series since 1918. And so when I was looking around, reading about teams, watching different teams, I felt like Newcastle was a lot, similar in a sense to what the Red Sox were back then. Just a hard, scrappy type of team, city, area that hadn't won. And so I thought, hey, Newcastle's great. And then I'm in London, gosh, when was it? I think it was like 2008, 2009. I think it was April of 2009. And that was the year that they were about to get relegated. It did get relegated. Shearer was back to be their manager for a bit. And I'm in, a Sports Direct in Piccadilly Circus, and I'm getting myself my first Newcastle top, and the kid working the changing room, the dressing room was like, they're awful, right? And I'm like, I do, but this is the club that I've adopted. And so he's like, are you sure you really want to buy that? And I did, and I wore it on the plane home, and I'm in Heathrow, and people are looking at me like, man, this guy comes to London, and that's the shirt he gets? My goodness. But, yeah, and now I've got a closet filled of Johan Cabaye jerseys and a Hudson Ben Arfa jersey, which I can't even wear anymore because, Mike Ashley's selling all the good players and stuff. So, yeah, it is what it is.
I think, Mark, we both, well, me and Neil showed similar paths on this. Neil is a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and it's great now, but like when Neil chose to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, we were at a friend's house, and Neil didn't watch the NFL, and he was kind of said, who should I support? And my mate decided to say, well, we'll pick Philadelphia because it's big city and rocky and blah blah, when he knew they were rubbish, and he hadn't even drafted Donovan McNabb then, and he was assuming they were going to be rubbish forever. Whereas we always say now he should have picked Cincinnati at that point because they were also rubbish, but they'll always be. And right. And I support Washington, but when I started supporting Washington, Joe Gibbs was the coach the first time.
Oh, okay.
So that was good. But now you just you go on Twitter and you're like, oh God, look, we spent a load of money on someone I hate. Oh look, my owner's a joke. Oh good, this is fun. Can't wait to play. Yeah. Can't wait to play those games again this year.
It's super. And what's interesting now, living down in the DC area, is that this area it's not a sports town, it's not a football town, it's a Washington Redskins town. And I mean, I remember when we first moved down here, they beat, I guess it was 2002, and they beat the Rams to get to 3-6, I think. And all sports radio talked about Monday morning was playoffs. We're getting to the playoffs. We are 3-6, but we're going to make a run to the playoffs. And I almost drove off the Beltway. I was just like, oh, is this really what we're talking about right now? 3-6 playoffs? I mean, play the Jim Mora clip. I mean, that's how I felt. But that's how this city just revolves around the Redskins. Like they're still talking about RG3. There are still fights about RG3 on sports radio to this day.
I think I listen to a bit of sports talk radio from Washington as well, and I think they talk about Washington, the Redskins, because the Capitals, who are the hockey team, choke every year in the playoffs. The Wizards are decent, but will also be choking in the playoffs, and the Nats choke in the playoffs. So
the team that never gets there is the safest option.
Yeah, exactly
yeah.
Right. It's a lot easier.
Yep.
It's a lot easier. Well, Mark, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll let you get back to March Madness. And I hope your pool's still in one piece. I assume it is, given the Gonzaga comeback in the last minute.
I honestly, one of these Gonzaga is going to be the death of me, because the years I pick them, they lose in the second round. The years I don't pick them, they make runs. They're going to kill me again this year, but it's fine. We'll see.
Okay, cheers, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
And that was a brilliant Mark Schofield, Neil, talking us through quarterbacks and why Washington stink.
It did remind me of a story. I was going to mention it, but I couldn't think of a logical way to shoehorn it back in. There was a gentleman who played cricket in Maghull a few years ago named Martin Cropper. He was a bit of a head case, but in a lovable kind of way. He was given out in slightly egregious circumstances. He left the field, went into the changing room, kitted up. He came out a few minutes later. He'd taken his pads off, his helmet, his gloves and all that. He had his bat and a saw. Now, for those who've never played at Maghull, it's a very picturesque ground, backdropped with the St Andrew's Church, and runs the canal, the Leeds Liverpool Canal runs along it. He proceeded to go up to the bank of the canal, sit on the bench there, and saw his bat to pieces.
Oh my God!
And then threw the sawdust into the canal.
Yeah, I think I've never done that. I'd like to state for the record for people listening, the putter thrown in a tree story is actually my dad, not me. Dad went on to win that match after getting the guy to get his thing down, his putter down. Neil, any articles and bits and pieces that people can see and read and listen to you this week?
I have been quite busy this week. I have on Number Fire. I have had a series regarding red zone efficiency. So there is the quarterbacks, the 5 most and least efficient quarterbacks in the red zone, the 5 best runners and least and worst runners. I say runners because I don't say running backs, because not all of them are running backs. Tease. And also pass catchers, best and the worst in the red zone. I've written a piece on Number Fire about Allen Robinson. I have one going up about the wonderful additions the Baltimore Ravens have made to their wide receiver core. Jesus.
Which wonderful ones are you? Oh, sarcasm. Sorry.
Yeah, sarcasm. I have a article for RotoViz coming up regarding some tight end moves and the early thoughts of them. And the RotoViz Scouting Index, the quarterbacks and wide receivers, the latest iteration will be out at the end of this week, probably early next week after now I think about it. So please read, retweet, enjoy, send me abuse, all kinds. Fantastic. And follow me on Twitter at @endupton13.
I am at Main7, and combined we are at waxing_lyrical. And these boys are well and truly out.